Hello, welcome to this week's Saturday session with Amy for Junior Cycle Home Economics, where we will be looking at sustainable and responsible living and associated exam questions. Make sure to follow us on our social media platforms. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and of course our YouTube channel. Check out our YouTube channel to see previous recordings from Junior Cycle Home Economics. Today's plan, we'll be looking at sustainable and responsible living. I've divided into two parts. We'll be looking at the first part first, followed by exam questions, and then the second part, and then more exam questions. The learning intentions in sustainable and responsible living one are to be able to explain what sustainable living is, to explain and define environmental terms, to discuss environmental pollution and their associated types, to outline methods of home heating, to distinguish between the two sustainable home heating methods, to explain the purpose of insulation and give examples of types of insulation used in the home, and to be able to know what a BER cert is, or a BER cert. So first of all, what do you already know about sustainable and responsible living? Sustainable living. So as consumers, every time we buy and use something, we are damaging the environment. We're using up natural resources such as water, fuel, and paper. We're polluting the air, which is therefore damaging the ozone layer. We're producing waste such as CO2 and sewage. So sustainable and responsible living is a lifestyle that aims to reduce our carbon footprint and to conserve the Earth's natural resources for future generations. So if you were asked in an exam question to define sustainability, you would say that sustainability is a lifestyle which is trying to reduce our carbon footprint and conserve the Earth's natural resources for future generations. Your carbon footprint. This is a definition that does come up in exam questions. It is particularly topical because it's not something that would have come up much in the last junior cert. So it is very topical, and especially with the COP conference last year and with everything going on about the rise in energy costs and pollution. So carbon footprint is the total amount of greenhouse gases produced directly or indirectly by human activity. So every time you go to school in a car or by bus, there's fumes being emitted from the vehicle which you're traveling in. Every time you heat up your breakfast in the microwave, you're using up electricity. When you leave the tap running when you're doing your teeth, you are wasting water. If you don't recycle and throw everything into the brown bin, you're also contributing to your carbon footprint. So you need to be able to define it and give examples of how you can reduce your carbon footprint. So here is an NCCA sample paper question. The question says, a typical Irish home has a carbon footprint of 11 tonnes, which is one of the highest in Europe. And this is huge, so what is meant by carbon footprint? And for this you would just explain what it is. So it means that it's the total amount of greenhouse gases which you produce directly and indirectly, and then you could give your example. For example, I should walk to school instead of going by car because by car I'm emitting emissions, exhaust fumes, which is contributing to global warming. So you want to state, explain, and give an example for full marks. Here is another sample paper from the NCCA. So it says to describe 3 actions which you can take to reduce your carbon footprint in the home. So number 1 would be to turn off lights when not in use because you're wasting electricity. Number 2 would be to put on a jumper before turning up the temperature on the thermostat, which is especially topical coming this winter because of the increased cost of energy. Number 3 is to choose to eat more sustainably locally produced foods. So for example, try and eat more plant-based meals instead of the likes of steak and minced beef, because by rearing the cattle, there is a lot of emissions being released. So a lot of methane from the cattle is released into the environment. There's a lot of water used, and it's just generally not good for the environment. And then when the cattle is being slaughtered, it is then going to be brought and it's going to be packaged and sent to your local shop, which is then causing food miles. So you want to reduce your food miles and try and eat local. So pollution, the definition of pollution is any harmful addition to the environment. For example, the addition of smoke from factories and car exhaust fumes. Here is a sample paper. So we have here environmental terms on the left and definitions on the right. So we have climate change, fossil fuels, recycling, and organic waste. So if I was to look at number one is climate change and I was to read through it, so the first thing says repurposing waste into new materials to be used again. I know that's not climate change. Next one is a change in weather patterns and temperatures due to carbon emissions. So that is climate change. So I'd write one and I'd write B beside it in the table to my right hand side. So that's that bit done. Next up is fossil fuels. So I know that A isn't it. C, items that can naturally decompose over time. No, it's not going to be that. D, formed when the remains of plants and animals which release harmful gases when burned. So I do know that harmful gases is to do with fossil fuels. So therefore, where it says 2, I'm going to write number D. Recycling. So part A says repurposing waste into new materials to be used again, and yes, that fits perfectly, so I'm going to write 3A. And then finally I'm left with organic waste and number C, which is items that naturally decompose over time, and I would write that there in 4C then. So acid rain, this is something that you will learn about in junior cycle geography and junior cycle science as well. So acid rain is rain that is polluted, and what's going to happen is it is going to destroy our natural habitats, because anything which is acidic has a pH of between 0 and 6, and basically it's going to start to eat away at stuff and kill it. If you have any type of materials like limestone, which is made out of calcium carbonate, the rain is just going to eat away at it and create holes. So greenhouse gases, this is something you really need to know about for science and for home economics. So if we have a look at this picture here, we can see the greenhouse effect. So we have the sun and we have radiation or heat being emitted from the sun. And what happens is this goes and hits the earth. So when it hits Earth, it reaches about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and without the atmosphere, it'll be about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So some is held by greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So there's like a protective layer called the ozone, okay? And some of this heat will escape back into space. So greenhouse gases are gases that trap heat and help to keep the Earth warm, okay? So naturally, this is good. But if we have a big, huge increase in greenhouse gases due to a build-up of the likes of carbon dioxide, which is being released because there are more humans in the world and we are breathing out our CO2. There's also a lot of more livestock which are breathing out CO2. You also have your methane, which is being emitted from cows. So what happens is when there's too many of these greenhouse gases, they build up in the atmosphere and they cause too much heat, which is what is causing global warming. So for example, really, really hot summers in Ireland are not natural. We shouldn't be reaching extremely hot temperatures and we shouldn't be having near droughts in Ireland. So you need to be able to state, explain and give an example of greenhouse gases. So global warming, so this is the long-term rise in the average temperature of the earth. This is not a short-term thing, this is long-term. So this is something that is going to happen over, it could be the space of decades or hundreds of years. So while with your seasons, the temperature is changing, it's short term. and it's natural, whereas global warming is long term and it is not natural. So global warming occurs because there's an increased amounts of greenhouse gases. So for example, your carbon dioxide and your methane, and as we said in the previous slide, they are causing an increased temperature in the Earth's surface, which is raising the overall temperature. Okay, so this is leading to warmer atmosphere and oceans, which is then actually frying fish. Rising sea levels, which is causing certain islands and places to become flooded, especially in Ireland, we're getting flooded more every winter. Changing rainfall patterns, so there are more stronger rainfalls. The rainy season is being extended. There is an expansion of deserts, so the Sahara Desert is growing every year. More flooding in coastal areas, so for example in the likes of Cork, they're getting flooded out of it every winter. Melting of the polar ice caps, which means that the likes of the polar bears and the penguins are having to move away to other places, but there's only so far they can go. Melting of your glaciers, more extreme weather events, so the way we're having tornadoes, more of them in America, that's not normal. Ocean acidification, so the Great Barrier Reef, and what's happening is the reef is made out of calcium carbonate, and what's happening is when the ocean is becoming more acidic, it's basically breaking down the reef, and it takes hundreds of years for the reef to actually recover. So even a 1 or 2 degree difference in the water temperature or the water pH is going to kill all of the coral reefs. So there's extinction of animal and plant species because their habitats are being taken over, or else they're melting away or being flooded. There's a food security threat for humans. They're not able to grow stuff as easily because the lack of water, too hot or not enough heat in some circumstances. So crops are failing to thrive. So for global warming, you need to be able to state, explain, and again, give an example of any of those there. So your ozone layer, we can see there on the left, we have the Earth, the troposphere, the ozone layer, and the stratosphere. So the ozone layer is between the stratosphere and troposphere, so you can see how far up it is from the Earth. So the ozone layer protects the Earth by absorbing your harmful UV radiation from the sun, and you can see pictures there of the ozone layer. Now, the ozone layer is becoming bigger due to all of the greenhouse gases, which are basically eating away with it, which means that more of the heat rays are coming in and it's warming us up, so the greenhouse effect. Greenpeace, so this is an international organisation that campaigns for a better environment. So here is another sample paper question and answer. With here, it asks us to explain the following terms. So the word explain means that it's coming from an action verb from a long question section usually. So it means that we're looking for lots of detail and full sentences. So global warming. So global warming is the long-term rise in the average temperature of the Earth. And you could say, for example, ocean acidification, e.g. the coral reefs are starting to die, or you could say more flooding. For example, we're getting flooded the whole time in, for example, Cork. Next up is your carbon footprint. So this is the total amount of greenhouse gases produced directly and indirectly by human activity, and then followed on by sustainability, which basically means that we as humans are trying to reduce our carbon footprint and to conserve the Earth's natural resources for future generations of people to come. So that is the sample paper and associated answers. Environmental pollution. So this refers to any way in which us humans are carrying out activities which are going to harm the natural environment. So it could be something as simple as going to a cafe, getting a hot chocolate and instead of putting the lid and the cup in the bin and recycling it, you just throw it on the ground. So basically, environmental pollution is because humans are not acting responsibly. So during COVID, when people were en masse and people just threw them everywhere, and then they ended up in the oceans, and then because then they get trapped in seabirds and turtles and everything, and they were killing them, and that's all because we were polluting the environment. So you need to be able to explain what environmental pollution is. Now, there are two types which we will be looking at in home ec. There's air pollution and water pollution. On the junior cycle science course, you go into more detail. So if you're doing science, make sure to look over those notes as well. So types of environmental pollution, air pollution. So you need to be able to state it, explain the causes, and then explain the effects. So causes of air pollution, so the likes of burning fossil fuels at home, so your home heating fuel, for example, lighting a fire. Agricultural activities, so animal waste produces methane, which damages the ozone layer. So there are nearly more cattle in Ireland than humans, and this is causing, this is our major factor in not reaching our climate targets with the EU. Deforestation, so that's when huge amounts of forests and woodlands are being chopped down. This is causing large amounts of forest being cut, which is then increasing the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. So as you all know from photosynthesis, the plants, they use 6 molecules of carbon dioxide with and what they do is they convert that and your food into your 6 molecules of oxygen, and then that is what we use to breathe. Okay, so you need to know that your trees, basically everyone should know from primary school that trees release oxygen, and when they're being cut down, this is a major contributor to CO2 increases. So air pollution, the effects is causing lung problems. So there's an increase in lung cancer, especially asthma in younger children and especially in cities. You can actually go online and look at the EPA, so the Environmental Protection Agency website, and they will tell you where air pollution is best and worst in Ireland. So for example, the likes of Dublin would be a lot worse off than for example Sligo, because Sligo is more rural than Dublin. There's an increase in bronchitis, air pollution is directly linked with climate change because you have your CO2 and your CH4 or methane. You have smog, you have acid rain, you have the depletion of the ozone layer, which means that we're getting hotter again. So smog is when you, for example, go into a town or city at night and it looks like this fog, but instead of actually being caused by fog, it's been caused by the burning of fossil fuels, and it can be very hard to breathe and it smells really smoky. Our second type of environmental pollution is our water pollution. So causes include human sewage. So in Ireland, we're only meeting 41% of our EU targets because the Ringsend sewage in Dublin is not working to an acceptable level, and a lot of our sewage is being emitted out into the land and into the seas and oceans, which is causing huge amount of water pollution. So we need to be able to meet our targets of 91% to meet the EU level. So at the moment, Ireland are one of the worst in the European Union for water pollution. And when water is being polluted, it is causing an increase in the likes of your E. coli, so your Escherichia coli. Water pollution from the likes of agricultural runoff. So you're not supposed to spread fertilizer 1.5 meters away from like a water source, so for example a river, because what happens is it will then run off and into the river, which will then cause an algal bloom, so be loads of like green algae growing in the water, and then basically what happens is the fish are going to die. Chemical waste from factories and industry, so for example your oil spills, and we've all heard of these from big oil rigs, and they basically kill all the fish and all of the birds. The effects of water pollution, so food poisoning from contaminated water, so your E. coli, the death of aquatic animals, damages birds, plants and wildlife, and you're spoiling nature. So if you go for a walk and you see a river and it's all green, it means that there is a serious amount of water pollution and you should not be getting in that water. So here are the two types of environmental pollution. Next up, we're going to look at living sustainably. So what this means is to choose an environmentally friendly method of heating. We are trying to reduce the amount of water and electricity usage. We're trying to reduce our overall waste, and we want to dispose of waste in an environmentally friendly way. You need to be informed about these environmental issues so that you can actually live sustainable. So you need to understand it so that you can apply it to your own daily lives, and then therefore help your family in becoming more sustainable. So home heating, there are methods of home heating. So that you could have individual heaters like the one on the bottom left, or you can have your central heating, which is the one on the bottom right. So your individual heaters are usually your storage heaters. You use them, for example, on the off-peak electricity. So for example, after 7 p.m. to I think it is 5 a.m. and the electricity is lower, but it's still using individual storage heaters is a lot more expensive than central heating. You have your gas fires, open fires, and fan heaters, which can be used for short periods of time. However, they are going to cost a huge amount of money if you have them on the whole time. You have your central heating. So what happens here is that you have water, which is heated by a boiler, or sometimes it can be a stove, but usually in Ireland we use the likes of gas or oil. So what happens is the heated water runs through the radiators and the underfloor pipes, and basically it heats each room as it goes. So the first radiator that is closest to the boiler is going to be the hottest, and the one furthest away is going to be the coolest. So basically this system provides hot water for the house as well. So if you haven't got enough hot water, then you'd have to turn on the immersion. So suitable more sustainable forms of home heating include heat pumps and our pellet boiler stoves. So these might be things that you might not have heard of. You may have heard of heat pumps if you are living in a new house. So heat pumps is a heating system, and it uses a relatively small amount of electricity. So it pulls heat from one source to another. It can be connected to an outside fan, and basically what it does is it pulls the heat from the outside, from the air, and there are two rods under the ground which then pull the heat from the ground into the house, or there can be two rods placed in running water, and they then are using your hydroelectricity, which pulls the energy from the water. So the heat pump will use this heat energy to heat radiators or underfloor heating systems and to provide hot water for the house. However, you are going to need to use electricity to use this, and while it is a relatively small amount of electricity, whilst at the moment we have an increase in the cost of electricity, people are going to notice a sharp increase in their heat pump bills, but when this drops again it will be more sustainable and cheaper, but it is a lot more sustainable and better for the environment than the likes of your oil heating system. Our second sustainable form of home heating is our pellet boiler stoves. Okay, so your pellets are these little things down the bottom right, so they kind of look like your bran that you get in your cereal, or they also look like chicken feed. So a pellet boiler stove uses the eco-friendly wood pellets. So what they do is they get sawdust and other materials that is left over from the wood industry, so for example your sawmills, and they compact them, so they squish them together under high pressure, and they create these little pellets that look like your chicken feed. So the pellets are automatically fed into the stove from a large storage container. Okay, and then as the stove heats, it heats the water, which then pumps it around the house to the radiators and the underfloor heating systems if you have them. The stove will also provide hot water for the house. Now, if the stove is not on and not being fired up with your pellets, you're not going to have heat and you're not going to have hot water. So therefore, it may not be suitable for the summer months. Other methods of sustainably heating the home. So you could fit rooms with a thermostat. So basically what that means is that all of the rooms will be kept at the same temperature, so a lower temperature. And you can choose then if there's certain rooms which are colder, like your bedrooms, and if you want to have them at a cooler temperature, and this will reduce the energy cost, because usually in your bedroom you have like a duvet and a blanket, so you might not need it to be as warm. You can turn off the heat in rooms that are not being used. So if you have a spare room and no one's sleeping in it, turn it up, turn off your heating in there. Heating systems, you can actually control them by your phone. So you could be in another, on your way home from the shops, and you want to turn it on, so you can turn it on so that it's not on constantly but only on from when you actually require it. And when the heating's on, you should obviously keep your windows and doors closed, okay, because otherwise it is going to escape the heaters. You should make sure that your house is well insulated. There are home grants available from the government to update your house. You should make sure that you are not using the likes of a dryer the whole time to dry your clothes, and try and dry them inside in the heat on your clothes rack. So these are just some other examples of methods which are more sustainable for heating the home. Here's a sample paper. So it says D part I, outline 2 ways to save energy when heating a sitting room. So for this you are looking for full sentences because it says the action verb outline. So my first sample answer is part 1. You should fit rooms with a thermostat so that the rooms can be kept at a lower temperature when there are, for example, your bedroom, so you want it to be a bit cooler, and this will reduce energy costs. So if you have a look there up at the picture, there's an example of a thermostat. You should also keep all the windows and doors closed so that your heat doesn't escape unnecessarily. So think of examples which are relevant to you. Here is another SEC sample paper which is very similar questions. So whilst this hasn't come up in the actual paper in 2022, it does come up very frequently in the sample papers. So this one says the family living room loses a lot of heat in the winter. Outline 2 ways to reduce the heat loss from the living room. So we could say, for example, there you could make sure to close the windows and doors. You could put curtains across the windows so that the heat is not escaping unnecessarily. You could, for example, put in a pellet fired stove so that you have constant heat going throughout the house. You could have a thermostat in the room. So there's loads of different ways you could reduce your heat loss. So insulation, the big blocks of pink stuff there are called insulation, and they are made out of fibers. So it's a material which is used to stop heat coming in or out of something. So it's in all of your walls in your house, and then they have plaster over it, and then they paint over that. It's also, if you go up into the attic, you will more than likely be able to see it, as it more than likely won't be plastered over. So good home insulation is really important for sustainable living. If a home is really cold, it more than likely means it is badly insulated, which means that you're going to have the heating on a lot more, which therefore means you are increasing your fuel costs, which means you're not living sustainable. Your windows, your walls, your roofs, your floors and doors should all be insulated with materials that are bad conductors of heat, okay? So they're not going to be basically meaning that you're going to have the heating on the whole time. Conductors is something you learn about in junior cycle science. So your bad conductors don't easily let the heat through them, okay? So examples of bad conductors include air, fabric, fiberglass, and your polystyrene. So types of insulation, there are 5 different types which we look at junior cycle home ec level. So in the attic you can have fiberglass. So this is wool which is basically squished or condensed into foam or pellets, and they're usually laid on the attic floor to prevent heat loss through the roof. Your walls, new houses have cavity walls, so basically it means there's 2 rows of bricks and 1 row and a timber frame with a gap between them. So this trapped air basically prevents the heat from escaping. Your floors, if you have carpets, even if you have wooden floors, they should have underlay underneath them, which are good insulators. Your windows should be double or triple glazed, as the air is trapped between the planes of the glass, which means that your house is going to stay either nice and warm in the winter or nice and cool in the summer. So any drafts, you should have heavy curtains. You should have maybe draft excluders at your front door to make sure that you are not getting heating that is the heat then leaving the house, especially if you have a door which has a letter box in it. Here's a sample paper of where you have to describe 2 benefits of a well-insulated home. So in this case, the house will be warmer, therefore less money will be needed to spend on heating up the house, which means it's going to be more energy efficient, and the house will also be more comfortable to live in because you're not going to have to keep putting on loads of jumpers the whole time. There is another very similar question. So you're looking at 2 more benefits. So it's extremely similar to this. So well insulated and reducing heat loss. So a BERCERT, which is a building energy rating certificate, is something which all homes in the European Union must have before they can be sold. So houses, they're rated from a scale to A to G, similar to the likes of your electrical appliances, okay? So A would be the best insulated and G would be very poorly insulated. So the rating is calculated, so there'll be a person that comes out and they will look at your house, they will look at how it was made, so constructed, the insulation, the heating, the lighting and the ventilation, and whether you have solar panels or not. And basically what that they will do is they will complete this building energy rating certificate. So here is a sample of what a BER looks like. All you need to be able to do is explain what it looks like and what it is about. So here is another sample paper where it says name the following types of renewable energy sources. So this is something that you would kind of expect more in a science exam, but it just shows it can come up in home ec. So your first one would be your wind power, okay? Second would be solar power because you have solar panels. Next would be geothermal, and then you had your hydropower. So advantages of renewable energy sources: they are clean, they are more cost effective, and they are better for the environment as there isn't any greenhouse gases or pollutants being emitted, which therefore would increase your global warming. So we've looked at sustainable and responsible living part 1 and a lot of exam questions. Now we're going to look at the second part of sustainable and responsible living, and then we're going to follow on with more exam questions. So in this second part, our learning intentions include being able to discuss the safe and sustainable use of electricity, outlining the sustainable gathering and heating of water, discussing household water sustainability, classifying household waste, analysing the European Union waste hierarchy, being able to know how to correctly use the 3 bins, infer why waste prevention is important, define recycling, give advantages of recycling, know how to recycle correctly, discuss composting, list sustainable practices when shopping, explain how to implement sustainable practices in your locality, and discuss the Green Schools Ireland programme. So there's a good bit to get through in this second part. So electricity. It is not a fuel, okay? So it is a clean and efficient form of energy. You will learn about electricity in the electricity chapter under physical world and science. So some electricity is generated from fuels, for example, your non-renewable sources, so your coal, gas and oil, and some is generated from water and wind, so your hydropower and your wind power, and these are renewable sources of energy. So as electricity enters a house, it comes through the service cables, so you will have cables that go through a sealed fuse box, okay? So the fuse box is usually located in the likes of your cloakroom, and what this does is it then records the usage. So some houses have a second meter, which is becoming more popular now, which records the off peaks of the night rate. So you can get cheaper electricity at night, which is why your parents and guardians might do the washing at night instead of during the day. So what happens is it then passes into a consumer unit that contains the main switch, okay? This can be turned off if there is an electrical fault or if any repairs are being made. So sometimes the safety device, which is called an MCB or miniature circuit breaker, will trip. So for example, if you have someone using the hair dryer and they also have the hair straighteners on the go and they have the dryer on and they have the oven on, it might overload the system, and for safety reasons it will trip and you'll hear a big like a noise, like a bang noise, and then you'll have to go to your MCB and you'll look at it and you'll pull it back up and it'll fix the fault, and you know that you shouldn't have all the appliances going on at the same time. So safe use of electricity, a lot of this is very common knowledge, so you just need to be careful so that you don't cause accidents. Repair and maintain as required. So if you have flexes that are broken, do not be using the hairdryer if there are the likes of live wires coming out of it. Be careful to not mix electricity and water, so that would be a very, very, very important point. Take extra care with children, okay? Make sure that they can't put their fingers into the sockets and electrocute themselves. So using electricity sustainably, there's a very good chance that something like this could come up this year, as it is very topical. So choose appliances with a very good rating, for example, an A rating. So this is similar to your BER cert. You should turn off appliances like your TVs, laptops and game consoles. So if you're leaving your Xbox on all night, your parents and guardians are going to end up paying a lot of money over the course of a year. Don't leave them on standby. Turn off lights when not in use. Choose your energy efficient bulbs, such as your CFL, so compact fluorescent lamps, or your light emitting diodes, so your LED bulbs. When you're washing clothes, wait till they are actually dirty. Use a cold cycle, so for example, wash at 30. Nearly all of the washing detergents now are used at washing at 30, and they kill any microorganisms. Wait until you have a full load as well. If you're boiling a kettle, don't fill it all the way up if it's just for you. Only put the amount in it that you are actually going to need. So water, we use water for everything. When the water is off, we are like really stuck. It's like when the electricity goes off, you're really, really stuck. So we use water for cooking, washing and flushing toilets, okay? So you can see there in the picture that the water comes from the mains pipe and it comes into a stop valve. Now, if you live in the country and you have for example, a well, the water will still come in through the house from the well into a service pipe. It will then go to the cold water tap unit. It'll go up to your storage tank in the attic, and from there it will go down into your bathrooms and kitchens and anywhere else that has a tap. So there are more sustainable ways of gathering and heating water for the home. So the sustainable gathering and heating of water. So rainwater harvesting systems can be installed to collect water from hard surfaces such as the roof. So this came up as part of a short question. It was actually short question 9 in the current junior cycle exam in 2022. It was answered very well. Rainwater is stored in the tank and can be used for flushing toilets, washing cars and watering gardens. So you can see a picture there from the left. Heating water sustainably, so it is becoming more popular that we're installing solar panels in Ireland because there are grants, and they are increasing the rates of grants, and you can also get green energy loans from the credit unions as well. So the heat basically is converted from solar energy to heat energy, which then heats up your water. When you're using water sustainably, turn off the tap when you are washing your teeth or shaving. Only flush the toilet when necessary. Have a shower instead of a bath, and do not spend 20 odd minutes in the shower. Wait until you have your full load of washing, and that if you are using the dishwasher, use it when it's full. Fix any dripping taps or leaking toilets in your home, because this will contribute to a hell of a lot of water waste. Place a base in the sink if you're washing vegetables, and use this for watering your plants. You should water plants in the evening, because what happens is the stomata underneath the leaves during the day, what they're going to do is they're going to cause an increase in evaporation. So you want to water plants in the evening and when there's not lots of sun out during peak times, like between 12 and 3 during the day. So the basically key thing is there, water plants in the evening. Waste management. So it's actually your local authorities, the county council, who are responsible for your waste management. So your organic waste is the likes of your biodegradable food, okay? So this breaks down over time. Now, it's not going to break down over the space of a day or two. It's going to take a couple of weeks, okay? So this is, for example, your sewage and food waste. Your inorganic waste is stuff which is not biodegradable. So it's not going to break down over time. It can be recycled. So it means you are breaking it down, but with help. And this is, for example, the likes of your glass, plastic and metal, which you usually bring to your, like your bottle banks, which are usually found outside the likes of primary schools. So we'll be looking at the EU waste hierarchy over the next couple of slides. This may be something which is very new to you and definitely wasn't in the last junior cert course. It is new to this course. So this is your European Union's preferred way of dealing with European waste. So everyone in the European Union follows this waste hierarchy. So the first thing that they look at is preventing food or any type of waste, okay? So what they want you to do is to only buy what you need. Don't throw waste into household bins. So they're looking at people to compost. The next level is minimization. So they want you to minimize the amount of waste produced. So maintain and repair goods. So for example, if you have a tear in your trousers, take out a needle and fix it instead of just throwing it in the bin. Walk, cycle, or carpool to reduce air pollution. Our next step then is to reuse and or repurpose. So you're reusing waste for the same or other purposes. So for example, reuse plastic bags and containers. So for example, in my home ec class, we would use the likes of your old roses, chocolates, and we'd use old Chinese containers, and we would use those to bring food in and out of school. You could donate clothes, furniture, or other household products to the likes of charity shops. Our next step is to recycle. So this is when something is processed to make them into new products. So you should only put in clean stuff, which is important to note. So the likes of paper, cardboard, cans, plastic boxes, and bottles into household recycling bin. You might notice that it's becoming more popular to get recycled paper in your copybooks. The next step is energy recovery. So this is to produce energy from waste disposal. So waste disposed in landfill sites, it produces a gas that can actually be used for heat. So incinerator plants, they must produce energy used in industry and homes. And finally, your last step is disposal. So this is where waste is buried in landfill sites or an incineration plant. So that would be the last step and the step in which the European Union does not want us to reach. So I would recommend being able to draw out the EU waste hierarchy, and then if you can state it, then you can explain it and give examples for a full answer. So here is an example of a sample paper where it looks at the benefits of waste management for the environment. So by not wasting, for example, the likes of food, it means that you are preventing it from being thrown into, say for example, the brown bin. Instead you're using it up. So for example, if you have if you've not eaten your whole big bottle of yogurt, instead of throwing it in the bin, you could use it to make the likes of muffins, okay? If you have again a hole in some, say your trousers or something, darn it and fix it instead of throwing it out. So you should know this from home. It's something that most schools do use as well. And I know in my home ec room, we would sort out the bins as well. So the likes of your green bins, you need to be able to know what goes into them. So for example, paper, newspapers, phone books, steel and food cans, your aluminium cans, juice and milk cartons, clear, clean plastic film. So your soft plastics. Your black bin is your general bins, okay? So the likes of nappies, animal waste, tin foil, ashes, candles, plasters, broken plastics. Your brown bin, your kitchen food scraps, out-of-date food, eggs, dairy, grass, clippings and leaves, and the likes of your cut flowers and plants. So you would need to know this because this does come up a lot in the short questions. So waste prevention not only is good for the environment, but most humans do care about their pocket and their money more than the environment, so they will be glad to know that it will save them money. So what you should do is only buy what you need. So if you only need one apple, don't go buy a pack of 6. And if you are buying the pack of 6, use them for something else. So maybe make stewed apples and put them in the freezer. You should compost organic waste like your vegetable peelings, your fruit and garden waste. You should think before throwing anything away. So can you actually use it for something else? So say if you have a top you don't want anymore, can you reuse that and turn that into a cushion? Buy products that don't have unnecessary packaging, so the likes of your loose fruit and veg. You should use your lunch boxes for sandwiches or salads instead of putting them in the likes of your cling film. So here's an NCCA sample paper, okay? So it says what is meant by the term food waste, and what you would say it's when you dispose of food which could be consumed unnecessarily, okay? So for example, and not eating a whole apple, binning it instead of chopping it up and having it with yogurt as a snack later. So you're thinking of examples which are relevant to you. Here is another NCCA sample paper. So it says to recommend 2 changes a household can make to reduce food waste. So number 1 would be to make a shopping list, okay, to avoid impulse buying, so that you are not buying stuff that will not be eaten and could end up as food waste. If you have lots of food, okay, try and preserve it. So for example, if you have loads of apples growing on your tree in the autumn, stew them and freeze them and use them throughout the year. This is the recycling logo, so the 3 hours, you will need to be able to draw those and explain what they mean. So this means to change waste into reusable material. Most household waste can be recycled, and you just need to look at the food label on, or the label on any of the things that you have in your house, and see if it is recyclable. So when veg peelings and garden waste are composted, the nutrients can be returned to the soil. The likes of your glass containers, paper and plastic can be recycled. Batteries can also be recycled. Usually you can recycle these to your local recycling bank or to the likes of Aldi or Lidl. Clothes can be recycled or given to charities to be reused. Your empty ink cartridges can also be recycled, so they should not be binned. Energy efficient bulbs can also be recycled in the likes of your local county council recycling centre. Some charities will take mobile phones and old pairs of glasses to try and raise money, especially for those people in third world countries. Here is an example of household recycling list. Now this does get updated every couple of years, so please do check it out and see if your basically refuse provider does actually recycle all of these things. So you have your rigid plastics, your tins and cans, and your paper and cardboard. So advantages of recycling: it reduces the amount of waste going into landfills, it reduces the use of raw materials such as metals, it creates jobs, lowers costs, and basically it's making the environment much healthier, and it looks better because we're reducing litter and pollution problems. Your composting, so what this means is when you get organic matter and you put it in a compost heap. So usually it could be just an area in your garden that is fenced off, or it could be an actual compost bin which is plastic, and you put the food into it and you put a lid in it so it doesn't smell. What happens is the microorganisms, so your fungi, your bacteria and your yeast and little microorganisms like little snails and slugs basically break down the food and turn it into compost, which is really good for growing flowers and plants. It can be done at home. You can use any kind of vegetable or plant based peelings, and even when you're cutting your grass, you can put the grass clippings into it. Here is an example of a question. So it says the items, and then you have to tick whether it's suitable for composting or not suitable. So your carrot peel would be suitable, as would your your tea bags. You would actually have to have a look at the box and see if they are, but most of them actually are compostable. Your cling film is not suitable. Paper egg carton, depending on what's in it, it may or may not. Your grass trimmings are. Broken glass is a no, as is tin foil. Here is a way where we're looking at environmentally friendly alternatives. So instead of using cling film, you could use beeswax strips. If you don't have beeswax wraps, you could just get some cotton and fabric, cut it into circles and put some beeswax pellets on it. Put it in the oven for a few minutes, let it melt, and you have your own beeswax wraps. Instead of using plastic straws, you could use paper or metal straws, which would be reused. Baby wipes, you could cut flannels into squares to use, or you could just buy the plastic-free natural baby wipes. So I know, for example, Aldi does sell wipes that are biodegradable. So sustainable practices when shopping. You should avoid buying over packaged products. You should choose biodegradable detergents and packaging. You should buy ozone friendly or environmentally friendly products. So instead of buying your Lynx spray cans, you should be buying a roll-on deodorant. You should buy fruit and veg that's in season and locally grown. Organically produced food has a lot less of a negative impact on the environment because they're not using pesticides. You should use reusable shopping bags. Look out for the EU eco label. Reduce your car trips, okay, so buy in bulk, and choose energy efficient electrical appliances with a rating of an A or a B. This is what the EU eco label looks like. You might recognize this. You regularly see these products in the likes of Tesco and Dunnes. So sustainable practices in your area. So first of all, don't litter. Organise or help with cleanup projects or anti-litter campaigns, or join your local tidy towns. Use your recycling facilities for glass, cans, plastic, paper, batteries, your phones and ink cartridges. Report any illegal pollution or dumping to your local authorities, so this is your county council, and people do get brought to court and have to pay huge fines. Get involved in your green school project in school. Instead of going to school by car or bus, walk, cycle or use public transport. This is what this Green Schools Ireland logo looks like. So it's a programme run by An Taisce, and it's supported by your local authorities, your county council. They look at 7 particular areas, so litter and waste, energy, water, travel, biodiversity, global citizenship, so they look at litter and waste, and they look at global citizenship, energy. So green flag is awarded to the school after each theme is completed. Here's another sample paper. So they have newspaper, and you have to be able to either put it in the home refuse bin, organic, compost or recycling. So the newspaper will go in the recycling, the plastic milk carton will go in your home refuse, your cling film will go in your home refuse bin, and your eggshells, that will go into your compost bin. So today we looked at sustainable and responsible living, part 1 and 2, and loads of exam questions. And as you can see, it is a very topical area, and due to the recent increase in energy costs, it could be likely that a question could come up in this year's junior cycle exam, but we can never guarantee that. Make sure to check out the ExamRevision website, look at Junior Cycle Home Ec, and this is how it is laid out. With every topic there is a presentation, there is then a video tutorial, there are quizzes, and you have your exam builder section. This is how the website for Home Ec is laid out according to the 3 strands. So you would click into, for example, today, responsible family living, and then you would find your sustainable and responsible living section. And under that, you would find your PowerPoint, your video, and your questions, which are self-corrected. Make sure to follow us on our social media platforms. So we're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and our YouTube channel. Check out our YouTube channel for past videos and future videos to come. So thank you for coming to today's Saturday session, where you listened to Amy talking about junior cycle home economics. We looked at sustainable and responsible living, which is very topical at the moment, and we looked and analysed and answered exam style questions. Thank you for coming to today's Saturday session.